Okay, it looks like we are ready to get started. Just one second. Okay, welcome everyone to our Johnston County Board of Education Virtual Candidate Forum. We are so glad that you have joined us tonight, and we apologize again for the technical difficulties. As y'all know, it's tough these days. Nothing exactly works like it should. So tonight's forum was organized by the Johnston County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the Junior Women's League of Smithfield. My name is Sarah Edwards, and I am the president of the Junior Women's League of Smithfield, which is a nonprofit organization of women committed to promoting volunteerism, developing the potential of women, and improving the community through the effective action and leadership of trained volunteers. To learn more about our organization, which is made up of women from all over Johnston County and beyond, please visit www.jwlsmithfield.com. Now I will turn it over to my co-moderator, Ms. Tamara Pierce.
Good evening. Again, my name is Tamara Pierce, and I bring greetings from the Johnston County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, where our motto is scholarship, sisterhood, and service. We were actually chartered in Johnston County in 2003. So we've been serving the area for a little over 17 years. We're excited to partner with the Junior Women League of Smithfield on this great event tonight, and I look forward to hearing from the candidates. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. The candidates for the 7-member Johnston County Board of Education run for 4-year staggered terms. Tonight, we will meet the 8 candidates who are running for the 4 seats whose terms expire in 2024. All members of the Board of Education serve the entire county, and there are no districts. All candidates are nonpartisan, meaning they are not running as representatives of a political party. You will be asked to vote for 4 candidates for the Board of Education during this general election on November 3rd. For more information about voting, please visit www.jocovotes.com. We will begin with an introduction of the candidates so you can learn more about them. Lynn Andrews is a resident of Smithfield, North Carolina. She is married to Don Andrews, and they have 2 children, 2 adult sons, Will and Taylor, who are married to Maria and Jenna, respectively. They have 5 grandchildren, Mason, Maxton, Marin, Mia, and Maverick. Mrs. Andrews is a graduate of Smithfield-Selma High School, Peace College, and Appalachian State University. She holds a Master's of Education from East Carolina University, as well as a Master's in School Administration from North Carolina State University. Mrs. Andrews has over 30 years of experience in our school system. She has served as a teacher, coach, administrator, and retired in 2010 as the director of the Exceptional Children Programs. She currently serves as an adjunct professor at Campbell University. Kay Carroll was raised in Smithfield and 4 Oaks and is a graduate of Smithfield High School and the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill School of Pharmacy. He founded Carroll Pharmacy in 1977. He is married to Terry Knott Carroll, and they have 3 adult children and 7 grandchildren, 3 of which attend Johnston County schools. Mr. Carroll is a member of First Baptist Church of Smithfield and is on the board of directors of My Kids Club. He previously served on the Johnston County Board of Education from 1992 to 2008, including serving as chairman. Teresa Grant has served on the Johnston County Board of Education for the last 4 years and is seeking re-election for 1 final term. Ms. Grant currently works for the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Sciences Center, as an environmental health and safety administrator. She previously worked as a chemist for 35 years, a manager for 30 years, a safety and security officer for 20 years, and taught in a university setting for 2 years. She has 1 adult daughter and 3 grandchildren, a high schooler, middle schooler, and elementary school student in the Clayton area. Ms. Grant resides in the Cleveland area and has lived in Johnston County for 23 years after first moving to Smithfield. Ronald Johnson is a lifelong resident of Johnston County. He is a 2001 graduate of Smithfield-Selma High School and went on to earn a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice Administration and a Master of Business Administration. In 2005, Mr. Johnston began his career with the Smithfield Police Department, where he is currently a major crimes detective. He is also an adjunct college business professor and driving instructor. He previously served as a school resource officer for Smithfield area schools and started gang and drug prevention initiatives to keep students out of trouble, as well as after-school programs, and partnered with teachers to improve the academic performance of struggling students at Smithfield Middle School. He has served on the Board of Education for 4 years. Britt Mercer has worked in local government for the past decade as Public Information Officer and Communications Manager for the town of Garner. Before entering local government, he had been in print journalism and teaching since the mid-1990s. He was an assistant English teacher in public schools in Japan for 3 years and worked at daily newspapers in Virginia, Alabama, and Taiwan. Prior to joining the town of Garner, Mr. Mercer was the editor of the Clayton News Star. He currently serves as Vice President of the North Carolina City and County Communicators and is a board member of the North Carolina Open Government Coalition. Mr. Mercer has a BA in History from the University of Virginia, a Master's in Journalism from the University of Texas at Austin, and just completed a certificate course in Municipal and County Administration at UNC Chapel Hill School of Government. Terry Tippett is a lifelong resident of Johnston County and a 1981 graduate of Smithfield Selma High School. He graduated from UNCW in 1985 and completed graduate school at UNC Chapel Hill in 1993. Mr. Tippett worked in the Rehabilitation Therapies Department at Dorothea Dix Hospital from 1986 until 2000, when he came to Johnston County Public Schools. Since then, he taught at South Campus Community School, Riverwood Middle, Corinth Holders High School, and North Johnston Middle School, as well as News Charter School. He has served as an exceptional children's teacher throughout in both self-contained and inclusion settings. He has also served as an athletic director and coach during much of that time. Mr. Tippett retired from Johnston County Public Schools in December 2019. He is a deacon, treasurer, and Sunday school teacher at Friendship Free Will Baptist Church. His wife, Peggy, is a retired exceptional children's teacher, and they have 2 adult children. Dr. Chuck Williams grew up in Raleigh and received his bachelor's degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and his medical degree from Wake Forest University. He has practiced in Clayton with Horizon Family Medicine for 15 years. Chuck co-founded Project Access of Johnston County, a nonprofit devoted to providing free health care to those without health insurance. He has served as the Chief of Medicine at Johnston Medical Center, on the leadership board of Southside Church in Clayton, and has enjoyed coaching many of his boys' sports teams over the years. Chuck is passionate about education and its interrelatedness to health. He and his wife, Robin, have lived in Clayton for 20 years and have 2 boys attending Clayton High School and 1 attending North Carolina State University. Mike Wooten graduated from Smithfield Selma High School in 1981 and attended Virginia Military Institute on a football scholarship. He graduated with a BA in economics and was commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant in the U.S. Army. Mr. Wooten had stints with the Washington Redskins, then decided to invest his time in the banking industry in Johnston County in 1987. He has been employed by United Community Bank, formerly Four Oaks Bank, in Smithfield for the past 25 years. Mr. Wooten has served on the Board of Education for the past 12 years, has been a college football official for the ACC since 2003, a past member of the Smithfield Town Council, and a retired 20-year volunteer for the Smithfield Fire Department. His wife, Paula, is a teacher and coach at Princeton High School, and they have 2 children, an adult son and a daughter who is a senior at Princeton High School. Those are our candidates. During tonight's forum, the candidates will be asked a series of questions and will have 1 minute to respond. Candidates, please keep an eye on the timekeeper, whose screen will be green when you begin to answer, yellow when 15 minutes remain, and red when your time is up. Please end your answer when you're signaled to do so. Members of the audience may submit additional questions via the form linked at www.jwlsmithfield.com. Questions should be addressed to all the candidates, not a specific candidate or a specific group. The order in which candidates answer questions will rotate so that each candidate is first for a different question. At the conclusion of the question and answer period, the candidates will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. We recognize that not all candidates may be able to complete their thoughts or address every issue, so they may wish to use their closing time to do that. So we will go ahead and begin with the first question, and that will go to Ms. Andrews first. How do you plan to support teachers through the virtual learning process?
Well, I think this is an ongoing process of support. I know the school district is looking at that, but we have to, as we go through virtual and then face-to-face, we have to look at ways to make sure that the teachers have not only the resources that they need, but the support in people that they need, because if a teacher is asked to do face-to-face and virtual or the remote learning, they're going to need extra support. I know the technology department is continuing to assist our teachers in this effort. This is huge. These teachers have to continue to have support, and the resources that they need are going to need troubleshooting. They're going to need extra other types of resources that may be needed. But teachers are working hard right now in order to try to meet the needs of their students, and it's just a very difficult time. But we're going to move forward through this, and our technology department, I'm sure, is working on this. And as we move forward from into face-to-face, it's going to continue. We're going to continue to try to need to help them.
Thank you, Mrs. Andrews. Mr. Carroll, you're next.
Well, I'm serving as a teacher for my granddaughter right now, and I can tell you it is a tremendous challenge, but I'm going to say thank you very much to our teachers right now, because they are working double time. As you well know, we've had all kinds of problems with the technology and all the stuff that we have had thrown at us. So, you know, the greatest way we could support our teachers in education, if we've learned nothing in this pandemic, is the fact that we are not treating and funding our public education as we should. We have failed our children. If nothing has shown, is the fact that, one, our infrastructure is not there for the internet, the programming that is purportedly supposed to work for the students to go back and forth on. I know with my granddaughter, you know, we go through the Google Classroom, we get advertisements popping up. You should not have advertisements. So I think the best thing that we could do to support our teachers is be tremendous advocates from this point on for this state and this nation to fund.
Thank you, Mr. That's time. Ms. Grant, you're next.
Thank you. When we looked at virtual learning, one of the things that we took into consideration was making sure that the teachers had at least one day a week for professional development, and that professional development is supposed to be geared towards virtual education. Some teachers are very good at it, some are learning. Just like we struggled getting this started today, they are facing some of the same situations with students trying to get on the internet. And we've been able to provide hotspots and Chromebooks for the students that need it, but that professional development is going to be key. Also listening to them. We get emails from teachers and parents alike almost daily, sharing concerns that they have, things that are not going well, so that we can pass those on to the appropriate people and try to get the help that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Next up is Mr. Johnson.
Yes, ma'am. And just to tell a quick story, I had a experience with this when I was teaching a face-to-face class during my business program, and immediately in March after COVID hit, it transitioned to a virtual class. And it was difficult for me to transition, and it is still difficult for me to transition now to the fall. I think the most important thing is to exercise patience. If anybody tells you they have the answers for this, they're wrong, because we're all working through this. There's going to be technology issues. There's going to be infrastructure issues. And I think it's just very important that we remain patient and understand this is uncharted territory. Give them the support they need, give them the PD we promised them, and help guide them. Also, we need to help guide the parents, because they're acting as a quasi-teacher too. They're in there doing the work with their children now. But I think the most important thing is to get back to school as safely as possible. Once you get back to school, those who are just not impressed with virtual learning, that becomes a non-issue. And then we work with those who are going to participate in the virtual learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next up is Mr. Mercer.
Hello. You know, we need to support our teachers. They've been getting bashed quite a bit on social media, and I know they're tough, but we need to show them some grace and some patience. I think that teachers among themselves need to find tools for sharing best practices and find those teachers who have been really successful and share plans, share lesson plans and such. They're going to need adequate support from IT and central office. Also, they're going to need adequate support inside the schools with TAs and with other classified staff that can help them with the other duties aside from just teaching. We know that teachers are putting in like 15-hour days already, and we got to make sure that they're not having to also do a lot of other ancillary work inside the.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Sorry, we had some technical issues with one of the candidates. Did you finish your answer?
I think so. Other than I'll just reiterate grace and patience for our teachers.
Absolutely, for us all. Thank you. Let's see. Next up, we have Mr. Tippett.
Can you hear me? Am I good?
Yes, sir, we can.
Yeah. I'm having some technical difficulties here, which is one of the things I would say we need to work with teachers on, because we've got teachers that are having the same technical difficulties with their students that I'm having right now. And you got so many students in this county that are not able to get on devices to hear what's being said. And I'm having to switch devices and do all kinds of stuff here right now to make arrangements. So in addition to supporting our teachers, the resources they need for their virtual learning, we also need to support them with resources they need to reach those kids that can't get to any kind of devices to hear what they're saying. They can't participate. We've got so many people in the county that don't have access. And I personally am one of them. It's not because I don't want it, it's because I don't have it and can't get it. And we got so many people in the county like that. And our teachers are not only facing the kids that they're teaching, but they have all these kids on their roll and in their classes, they can't get it. And that's what we have to think about too. We got to think about what we're doing in this county and how we're reaching all of our students, because everybody should have the opportunity. And we've got some kids who haven't had the opportunity to learn since March. And those are things that we got to fix, and we got to fix them quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Tippett. Up next, Dr. Williams.
I'd agree with what Terry and Kay touched on. This has really uncovered the digital divide that we all know exists in our country, but particularly in our county. I do want to applaud the system. Taking in these board meetings, I feel like they've done everything they reasonably can to get hotspots, Chromebooks, technology to kids. Every system's facing this. This is not unique to us in our state or even our country. And so I actually think the effort we've put forth, I've been proud of it. I'm proud of you guys that are already on the board doing it. You've tried your best to get the technology in the right hands. I had a principal that I taught with this week at an elementary school, and I asked him how things were going. And he said, well, one silver lining of this is I've never seen the amount of cooperation amongst teachers and principals that I've seen these 3 or 4 weeks. He said, he has a informal principal group that speaks periodically. He said, we've been on the phone, we've been emailing each other, sharing best practices, talking about what's working, what's not working. Wouldn't it be great to see that moving forward? Which shouldn't take a pandemic for us to share those kind of best practices with our teachers. So when this is all over and we are back to normal, that would be one of many lessons I'd like us to take away. What are the most effective ways to share best practices?
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And finally, Mr. Wooten.
Yeah, last but not least, I think the choir is preaching patience for everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the teachers for their hard work to get this done for students, as well as the parents being patient that are having to be teachers beside their students at home. I think the key is we need teachers doing virtual teaching, and we need separate teachers doing face-to-face. I've got a call this tonight in reference to a teacher that's teaching virtual, and then it takes all night to answer questions. And parents understand that teachers are working 9 and 10 o'clock at night to get your students' questions answered. And I commend them for working around the clock to get that done. Thank God for the CARES Act to get hotspots so students can have access. Appreciate the opportunity for hotspots on buses to drive to locations that don't have, for students that don't have access. I'm hoping this is a short-term situation and we can get through this. All of us get through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wooten.
All right. So we alluded to this earlier in some of the responses we heard, but the next question is, Do you see inequity in Johnston County Public Schools? If so, how could the school board address those issues? So I'll just repeat that. Do you see inequity in the Johnston County Public Schools? And if so, how could the school board address those issues? And Mr. Carroll, we'll start with you.
Well, certainly we know we have inequities in the schools in Johnston County. All we have to do is look at the scores. We also look at the demographics. So I think one of the ways we begin to look at this right now, as we look at growth, we look at our models. They use 3 criteria. The criteria happens to be utilization, it happens to be growth, and it has to be transportation. And the 4th, I think, criteria that we need to put in looking at this when we're building schools is the demographics of the schools around, and try to begin some tweaking of boundaries that is not going to cause a tremendous amount of busing, but that will bring some of our demographics more in line with what they should be. All the data tells us that when the demographics are better, that these at-risk children will learn better, learn more when they're put in classrooms, when they're all mixed together, and there's not such a tremendous lack of equity in those classrooms. So those things, other things, magnet programs are possible to do, special programming like that. But that also is another thing. If you have a good magnet program, it is not inexpensive.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. That's your time. My apologies. Ms. Grant, you're next.
There are several things that we can do to try and address the inequities. Social and emotional learning, curriculum, teacher experience and diversity in the schools, more vocational education, and early education. All these are key factors in student achievement, which is what we want all across the county. We want all our schools to be successful. We bought an English language curriculum. We're currently evaluating math. At some point, we need science and social studies. We've tried to ask for monies for incentives for teachers at our lower performing schools, monies to keep our TAs in the classroom and hire full-time bus drivers. More pre-K would also help with school achievement. The earlier we start, the better. But all those things take money. Money is certainly key in achievement, but those things would help address the inequities.
Thank you, Ms. Grant.
Thank
and
you.
Mr. Johnston, you're next.
Yes, just to start by saying, we've heard a lot of talk about moving people based on demographics, no matter how slight that may be. And I will tell you, I will never move a child based on the color of their skin. What you should do is make the schools better. And what we have done is made the schools better. If you look at some of the areas that are struggling, which is our Smithfield-Selma area, it's the I-95 corridor. We've implemented programs that are working. We have the IB program, we have JOCO Teach, we have the Fire Science Academy. We're even doing welding at Triple S. And if you're looking, because we can throw rhetoric out there, but if you look at the stats and you look at what's working, we have seen our composite scores, which is our English 2, our Math 1, our Math 3, and our biology scores, go up at Triple S by 10%. Way to go, David Allen. And we have our other scores, our ACT score, that went up 10%. We have other metrics that are going up. We are doing good in this area. Now, are we where we want to be? Absolutely not. We can always do better. But when I represent the Smithfield-Selma schools, that's where I went to school. And when I have principals, I go out there and I choose the best. You got a dream team of principals in the Smithfield-Selma area. It starts with leadership. It's programs and people. That's what we're trying to fix.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And Mr. Mercier, you're next.
Well, we could spend the whole night talking about equity issues. 1 minute on a situation that is 400 years in the making is, of course, inadequate. Nearly half of our students now in Johnston County public schools are students of color, but only about 20% of our teachers are persons of color. So I think we need to close that gap. We need to hire more African-American and more Latinx teachers so that our teachers look more like our student population. That studies have shown that helps. We need to insist on high expectations for all students with rigorous instruction. I would like to see more economically disadvantaged students and more students of color in our AP courses and to be well represented in both IB and STEM. We need to make sure 100% of our kids are reading at grade level by the 3rd grade. I think post-COVID, that's going to be something we need to laser focus on. We also need to make sure that our high poverty schools have their fair share of experienced teachers, because that's not always the case right now. And we need to focus on a better demographic balance for our schools when we're selecting new school sites and when we're shifting boundary lines a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Tippett.
I'm sorry, I don't know what the heck I'm doing with these devices. And I also don't have the timer, so I'm gonna time myself for a minute and I'm gonna try and shut up. But yeah, obviously there's inequalities everywhere. And how do we fix that? I don't think you can't mandate it. I like to have our schools look more like our kids, as we've said. However, we got to get the best people in there that do the best jobs, and we can recruit minorities. We can recruit whoever is as hard as we can. But we've got to have the most experienced teachers in the low performing schools, and that's what's been said, and that will work. But as far as busing, we don't want to bus kids. We want to keep our community school approach because that's the schools drive the community. It drives our economy, drives the community. So we want to continue with our community schools. We got to get programming in there, and it's not all about throwing more money at it all the time. It's about working and putting programs in place that are going to work, that are going to be effective, and that's what we have to do. And we got to bring everybody along and challenge everybody through additional trade, vocational, as I've said since December. We've got to meet everybody's needs.
Thank you, Mr. Tippett. And Dr. Williams, we'll hear your response.
If there was a one size fits all model, every system would just do it, right? So there isn't, and every school is unique and every student population is unique. I have 5 points, which there's no way I'll cover in a minute. But number one, we have to recruit and support our best leadership for these schools. We have to face reality. The underperforming schools can be the toughest jobs. So we need dynamic leaders that are able to turn schools around, and the people that are able to do that, they usually focus on broad vision, big picture, morale building, thinking outside the box for their student population. We need people that are creative, dynamic, ready to take on these challenges. And as I think Ron pointed out already, we've got some great people already in some of these places. We need to make sure we're providing them the training support that they need. Number two, make sure we're using the right data. One of my principal friends I talked to today said we still don't have the right balance on assessment and instruction. We're still too heavy on assessment. We need data because we don't judge success without it, but we got to make sure we're allowing time for instruction. I'll hit my other 3 points later in tonight's talk.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And Mr. Wooten.
Yes, we always hear about inequities along the I-95 corridor, but a lot of you hit it on the head. I think it comes back to recruiting, making sure that our teachers mirror our student population, especially along the I-95 corridor. As far as community schools, I'm 100% support of community schools. These families chose to live in these school districts, and that's where they need to be in front of their teachers. As far as a great program at Smithfield-Selma High School, Smithfield-Selma Strong, advancement via individual determination, the AVID program closes the gap of equity, of guiding diversity student population to college and career courses, knowing that they can be the first in their family to go to college. I think that's a great program that's producing great results at Smithfield-Selma High School and needs to be across the entire county. Funding model is a big issue as far as paying teachers incentives to work in these schools. Thank you. Time just ran out.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wooten. And Ms. Andrews will take the final response from you.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, let me just to give a shout out to the staff of these schools, especially those along the I-95 corridor. I think if you would look closely at some of the test scores, you're going to see that some of these schools, the individual students are growing more in proficiency than some of our other schools in the county. But let's talk about what we can do for these schools. Yes, there is inequity. And certain things we've got to look at is staff development as the district provides for these teachers in these schools. They need staff development in things such as just classroom management, escalation and de-escalation. They also need staff development and understanding poverty. We also need to be sure that we're given the option of reducing class size. They do receive funds to help with that, but we may need to help with more. it comes down basically to reading. You know, if I don't learn to read, little else matters. And that has to be a focal point of our education for these kids. We also need to be sure we're providing mental health services. These kids are coming to school trying to survive. Many of them are. We have to try to meet them where they are in the situations that they're dealing with. I too agree with stipends for these teachers. I do understand that that requires money. Also, I think we need to look at balancing the inadequacy of funds these schools may have in booster clubs, athletic departments, and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews.
The next question is, what are some strengths that Johnston County Public Schools can be proud of, and why do you see those as strengths? This question will have Ms. Grant start first.
Okay. I think we've done a great job with mentoring, internships, pre-apprenticeships, and then just some of our CTLA classes. We have many business partners that work with our students, and we're so grateful for them. We have companies like Norvo Notice and Caterpillar and Cisco that offer these programs for our students, the town of Clayton, Smithfield, Benson, with line worker programs. Ronald mentioned the fire academies or welding. We have that, carpentry, automotive services. We have a lot of things to help students get excited about education. We also have full dual immersion English, Spanish classes at Selma Elementary and Cooper Academy. Studies have shown that that helps students with student achievement to do this dual language. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Mr. Johnson, you're up next.
Well, I think with the school system, it's much like many other organizations. The most amazing thing you have and the biggest strength you have are your people that work in your school system. Everyone from the teacher, first year teacher to your 30-year teacher, your cafeteria workers, your bus drivers, your custodians, principals, everyone who works for the school system has the best interest of kids in mind. And if you don't come to the game with that, it doesn't matter what programs you have. It doesn't matter about your academic performance, because if you don't come to the game caring about kids, then everything else is irrelevant. So the biggest strength we have is our people, because faced with any type of adversity, they would get it done. And I know that a lot of folks want to talk about programs, but we're going to focus on people as well, because without people, there are no programs. When we talk about JoCo Teach, the most amazing thing we have in our district is our kids, and they want to be teachers too. The Fire Science Academy, they want to be servants too. They want to be firefighters. They want to go out there and make a difference. And that's what keeps your community going.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Mercer, you're next.
Yeah, I mean, I'm particularly proud of our teachers and the principals. You know, with the teachers, so many of them here, they feel connected to Johnston County in a way that I don't necessarily or haven't necessarily seen elsewhere in other places that I've lived or worked. You know, we have some real visionary principals and just folks putting in a lot of time up and down, you know, up and down the organization. I'm also really proud of the AVID program and think that it should be expanded and help, you know, many students become the first kids in, or the first people in their families to attend college. That's a great thing. The IB program, which our family participates in, I think that could be expanded and make that a K through 12 track program. You know, our CTE, or career and technical education programs, are strong. I think we can continue to make our health sciences offerings even stronger, because that's where the jobs are going to be, the good jobs of the future. And finally, I want us to celebrate our diversity. You know, like I said before, about half our students now are persons of color, and that's a great thing. That's what America looks like. That's who we look like, and that makes us stronger.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Mr. Tippett, you're up next.
Hi. Obviously, I think we got lots of things to celebrate in Johnston County Schools. And I would agree with what Rick and Ronald just said. The staff is the number one thing. We've got the best staff there is. You can't have better staff than I don't think you'll find better staff than what we have. We also have lots of other things. I mean, we've got Obviously, I think we have one of the best EC programs around. That's why you see so many parents moving into the county with exceptional children, because we do a great job with our exceptional children's teachers, with our exceptional children kids. Of course, and I hear all kind of budget stuff about it. That's part of the budget problem. But we're here to serve all of our kids. We also have great extracurricular activities. This county supports extracurricular activities. They're part of the community, and that all goes back to being part of the community schools approach. Because if you have a community schools approach, then you're going to be part of the community. And that's why people are coming into our county and not leaving.
Thank you, Mr. Tippett. Okay, next up is Dr. Williams.
One of the most enjoyable parts of running for this office is meeting all the people involved in our system, and their passion is unmatched. You guys several of you have already spoken about how great these folks are. They're talented because they're competent, they're good at what they do, but what really elevates them in my mind is their passion. They care so deeply about their profession, their professionalism, and also the children that they serve. It's been inspiring. I've learned so much just this year, again, meeting people all over the county. I think the other strength of our county is related to this, and it's our size and our diversity. Now, this is also our biggest challenge because we've got such a wide range of student needs, student types, and family types. And just geographically, we've got a very big county to serve. But that is a strength because there's strength in diversity, there's strength in size, and there's strength in the various opinions and styles of learning that we're able to achieve at these schools.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Mr. Wheaton, you're next.
Yes, ma'am. It's, everybody's hit it on the head. It's definitely people power. People power is where it is. From the superintendent down to the newest employee, they make the wheel turn. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it hadn't been for students and coaches invested in me, because I came from a dysfunctional family and needed the direction. They didn't have to hold me by the hand, but they did. And I know that's what teachers and staff do each and every day for students. Number two is community-based schools, connecting our communities to our schools. Our schools will not be successful without the support of our local communities and businesses. That's great for Johnston County. Our CTE growth among the county, and it continues to grow. I would like to see more biotech, CTE education in our county for our students. And the partnership with Johnston Community College and Mount Olive College and NC State that gives all these students opportunities to get associate's degrees to save their family money that they would have to send them off to college to get these associate's degree. They can get it during their high school education. And there's so many more things that we could talk about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheaton. Ms. Andrews, you're next.
Okay, well, we have so much to be proud of. We are Johnston County. All of us sitting in this meeting, those that are listening, we're Johnston County, and we are proud of where we come from. And we have every reason to be proud of our school system. As it's already been said, but first and foremost, it's the people we have. It's the students we have in our district. It's the staff members that we have working so hard from like you said, from superintendents all the way down. It's everybody coming together. It wasn't long ago, and I'll say this in my closing statement, that, we were top in the state, and we're going back there. We're going back there in our areas of proficiency, in our areas of education. But right now we are a comprehensive district that provides so much for its students. And I understand many have mentioned the programs, and I agree with that, the college and career ready, all of these different programs that have come into play. But we have so much to be proud of just because of who we are, the schools that we have, the facilities that we have, the students that walk in those doors or will be walking in those doors, the teachers and the staff that are working so hard right now while we're sitting here to meet the needs of their students. And I'm just grateful for all of them. And I'm grateful for everyone who steps out in faith and tries to reach the life of a child, because that's what this is all about.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Finally, we will have Mr. Carroll.
Well, I can't add much to what they've said other than I totally agree. Our staff, our people is our number one asset. And we do have some wonderful folks working for us. And we also have good programs at every one of these schools. And we also have, I think, great facilities. And what we need to add to all this is a sense of union. And we've had people ask that question, unity, what's going on? So what we need to add to that mix of what we have in our strengths is a leadership, vision, knowing where we want to go, what we want to accomplish, and working with everybody, having everybody on the same page, going for the same goal, and using data to get to where we need to be, reviewing it every year. And I think we will, again, as Lynn said, we were one of the top systems in the state when I left the board in 2008, and there's no question in my mind that we can be there again because we have the teachers, the principals, the staff, and the students and parents to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, you'll have the opportunity to respond first to this next question. And the question is, what are 2 to 3 needs that must be priorities for Johnston County Public Schools to address? And why do you see those as needs?
Well, number one is academic performance, because that's the driving factor in our local economy. People move to our area for the schools. So if you have a specific community that is struggling for economic growth, that is a big driving, and that is a force and a determinant in what happens in your community. But let me back up. Number one is going to be this $4 billion projected shortfall by the state as it pertains to school budgets. Johnston County and many other counties throughout North Carolina are going to suffer based on the projected budget shortfall, which was announced to be, I believe, $4 billion. That's going to trickle down to us, and we have got to be prepared. We have to start looking at budget issues now to be sure there's no wasteful spending. That is going to be a major priority for us as a Board of Education. We've already started. If you look at the last meeting, we're looking at a assessment on ORI, return of investment, on all the programs we're offering to be sure that we're not going to come up short. Might I add, we got a $10 million surplus right now, a stark contrast to where we were. Didn't get number 3 in, but I would just say improve the safety in our schools because it can go wrong anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And Mr. Mercer?
Yeah, I want us to focus on some of the financial stuff. I'm encouraged by Dr. Bracey and his new finance officer. I think the budget definitely needs to be reorganized, restructured. Departments need to be able to defend their budgets, own the budgets, and be accountable for them. I'm shocked that really hasn't happened in the past. It's standard operating procedure for municipal governments where I've been working for the past decade. We're going to need to work with commissioners. We're going to need to partner on a funding formula. We're going to need to adequately fund our schools. Our per pupil funding is below the state average. It actually, dipped for a few years recently and it started to come back up, but it's still below the state average. We're well below many of our peer counties. And so we need to address that. We also need to get our arms around our school construction and renovation needs. We need, in addition to the Thanksgiving school, probably 4 more schools, and Clayton High desperately needs some help. It's really in parts of it are just in dismal condition. We can do better.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Mr. Tippett?
Yeah, some of the areas I think we got to focus on. First and foremost, obviously, it's the performance, student performance, student achievement. That's declined so much. When I came into the county in 2000, we were at or above the state levels, and now we're below them everywhere. We got to work on that. We got to fix that. The other thing we got to work on is filling our staff positions. There's so many staff vacancies throughout the school year. And obviously now it's totally different than other times. I understand that. But once we get back to some semblance of normalcy, we've got to be able to fill those staff positions. And we got to look at the growth in our county. We got to work with county commissioners on the growth. We got to find ways that we're going to be able to build schools. We got to have more schools. Rick is right. We got to have more schools, and we have to find ways to do it. It'd be kind of neat if some of these developers would leave a little portion of land in the front of their subdivisions for elementary and middle school. We got to be thinking out of the box. I know people don't like that, but we got to do it.
Thank you. And Dr. Williams?
Well, the elephant in the room is the kids aren't in school. So I think the biggest need before we address any of these other things is what do we do about COVID? I'm encouraged this week. We've had some better medical data. Our positive test percentage is looking better, which is one measure of how well the virus is controlled in our county. Our hospital capacity is still holding steady. We can take care of people there, and our case count is coming down. So I just want to finally give some words of optimism after a really miserable year for all of us. the ongoing educational and social losses of COVID, we're just beginning to see the iceberg tip. And I'm very concerned about the social and emotional deficits that are going to result for this, in addition to the educational losses. So we as a board will have to begin crafting now a plan to begin to recover some of these losses and have a program to do so in every single school. We'll talk more about this later, but this is a huge issue.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Mr. Wooten.
I agree with Dr. Williams. Students need to be in front of their teachers and learning in the classroom. Hopefully there'll be some relief on the 50% occupancy of schools across the county and the state of North Carolina, so students can get back in school. That leads to academic performances. Definitely needs to be increased. I think we ranked 83 out of 115, and we need to be in the upper quartile of academic performance. Academic performance and resources that to purchase curriculum, which increases academic performance, is led by a funding model that we need to put in place. The current finance committee, which is Ronald, Teresa, and I, are in negotiations with the commissioners to be able to put a committee together to get that started. Also building schools. We're 5 schools behind right now, and it's important that we have a conversations with the county commissioners to start banking land, because the way subdivisions are coming across Johnston County, we need to be banking land to build schools. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Andrews, you're next.
Hey, I agree with a lot of what they've said. You know, I've been a person that's been all about academic achievement because I saw the dip that we were making. And certainly that still continues to be a big issue. But I think, as Dr. Williams said, we have to look at what is happening to our students right now. We're going to have a plan in place. The gap has gotten bigger in academic achievement while we have been out of school. We have got to have a plan in place for how we're going to address that. Budget continues to be an issue. My main thing is, let's see where our money's going and how well is it serving us. So we need to be looking at that. Also, career. I'm big on career preparation. You know, for every one job that requires a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, there is 2 jobs that require a bachelor degree. There are 7 jobs out there that only require a 1 or 2 year certification. We have to get students into this area. Those who are not equipped or who not desire to go to college, we need to get them into one of those 7 types of careers. So those are just issues that we have ahead of us, but all of these can be worked out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll, you're next.
I think the number one priority of the school board needs to be academics without any question. So I think one of the things we've got to do is assess our curriculum across the county and make sure we have curriculums in place and that they're consistent across the county. Also, finances are a big issue, and I don't think we can just, pound the county commissioners over the head. If you look at the region that we're in, and nationally, I think the average per student expenditure for the United States is something over $13,000 per student. If you look at around the region of us, I think we are $2,000 below even the next closest state. We're at something over $9,000. And South Carolina, we used to just jump South Carolina. We wanted to use them. They're at over $11,000. So we're some $2,000 less than the next state. And it gets even more dramatic as you look at Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia. So those things we have to do, and also growth. Growth has to be a part of it. But again, we need to go towards the state. State can do a statewide bond issue to help these counties build schools.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. And Ms. Grant, you'll have a final opportunity to respond.
Okay, thank you. Well, I already spoke about student achievement at great length already, but 2/3 of our schools are C or better, and 50% meet or exceed. 92% 4-year graduation rate. So we can do better than all this. We need to ensure that the great teachers that we have all the resources they need to do their job. Budget, as Ronald said, we're 10 million over surplus right now. We're working with the county commissioners. They are looking at funding models, which should help a lot. Mr. Mercer said we are below the state average for local funding. If we were at the state average, that would probably put another 3 to 4 million into our budget. We're over capacity at most of our schools. New schools would help us balance capacity. We know that if we reduce the student-teacher ratio, then that helps increase performance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question will go to Mr. Mercer first. The current school board has discussed a proposal to conduct future Board of Education elections by district. Is this a plan you support? Why or why not?
Well, I was pretty active in speaking about this and kind of stirring up public discussion of this back earlier in the spring. I think they threw their initial proposal together in a slipshod manner and just wanted to kind of push it through it. And they recognized that that was just not the way to lead on this issue. I do think that district elections could be a good thing and that they could lead to a more representative school board, which we certainly need. One thing, there's a proposal or a discussion about drawing the district lines according to high school attendance boundary lines. I think that could be a consideration, but we also need to take into account the number of voters in each district and make sure there's a fairly equal distribution. But the most important thing is this: if we have district elections, people should get to vote, or they should vote only for their own district seat. There shouldn't be countywide voting for district seats, because then you just wind up with the commissioners. You got a bunch of conservative white guys, and that's not representative. That's not who Johnston County is in the year 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Next, Mr. Tippett.
I've made my position very clear on that. I don't have a problem with the concept and the theory of district elections. I also have said there's many obstacles that we got to get past. One being, if we vote for district elections, then we're saying we're going to have a higher number of people on the school board. That's going to happen. We got North Johnston and Princeton sharing one now. What's the magic number when they don't share one again? And we got new high schools that need to be built. Secondly, you've got elementary schools and middle schools that are split high school, meaning they go to different high schools. How's that going to work? There's so many obstacles that we got to overcome. And I do agree with Rick. I think only that district should vote for that representative. The people in Clayton should pick theirs. The people in South Johnston should pick theirs. And that's the way it should be. I'm not opposed to the theory of it, but I have a hard time believing that all these obstacles can be overcome by 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Tippett. Next is Dr. Williams.
In the big picture, I also endorse the idea of districting the board. Again, as I've gotten to meet with different groups across the county this year and campaigning for office, it's pretty clear not every community feels well represented. And some of that is a function of the size of our county. We have a really large county. And if you don't have adequate representation, it's going to feel easy for folks to feel marginalized. Districting would solve this, because at least every citizen in each part of the county would have a designated board member who he or she could go to with an issue. And again, in the more rural, less populated parts of the county, I think this would be super important, because they may feel neglected now. The challenges I see in a district model is getting qualified candidates to run. We had a great year this year, 16 strong candidates, very unusual. And we've got 8 good candidates now. But if we want to go to this model, we as a board and we as a county are going to have to be more deliberate in cultivating future leadership and encouraging citizens in every part of the county to participate. We're all in this together, and we'll need good candidates if we go to a district model.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Next is Mr. Wheaton.
Yes, I agree with the district model. With the growing population of the county, everybody wanting to move to Johnston County in a geographic size, I support, many communities support equal representation among all the feeder patterns. However, I would think the entire board welcomes the feedback from all the feeder pattern. I don't think the board would ever put anything on the county as far as district voting unless we have a town meeting in every feeder pattern to get the feedback from the local feeder patterns. I definitely want to hear what everybody has to say, but as large as this county is growing, equal representation among all the school feeder patterns is key for this county to move forward and have equal representation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wooten. Next is Mrs. Andrews.
I also agree with the concept of district voting, and I voiced that concern. But I do have some reservations, as you've heard here before. You know, how is the voting going to be done? I don't agree with district-wide voting. I certainly don't agree that someone would be elected to represent a district in which they didn't win the majority vote. I think that defeats the whole purpose. I also have those questions out there like the rest of these candidates. What happens when a new school is built? What happens when more high schools are built? How big is the Board of Education going to become? How many members is the board willing to have? Those type of things, qualified people, all those come into play. But I think the concept of it is right. I do, though, feel strongly that every board member cares about the entire the school system, the entire school system. We're not locked into representing and just serving one area. And I think that's been the benefit of the at-large that we've had in recent years. But yes, I think to best serve our citizens, we need some type of district voting. I'm just not sure how you're going to get it into place in a timely manner.
Thank you, Mrs. Andrews. Next is Mr. Carroll.
I do support the idea of looking into districts. I don't think the Board of Education should be the one that decides what that is. I think the Board of Education has a responsibility of creating a public committee that will look into it. And that committee, and I have put this out there, that committee needs to be parents. It needs to be town leaders, elected officials, include a county commissioners on there. If school board would, I think, chair this group and lead the direction. But you got to bring in people that have been through this, experts that can tell you, where you're going to have trouble, what you got to look at. And I have been through this process when I was on the board, and it was a year-long process at minimum. And so you have to worry about it. And there are all kinds of underrepresented people here. It could be geography, but also it's minorities. So one of the big issues that we ran into was the fact if you draw a district that almost precluded a minority ever getting elected. So I just think you have to do it as a public committee, and you use parents, you use your community and make it look like your community, and then go with that with the experts as they give you the pros and cons.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Next is Mrs. Grant.
The school board itself is not looking at this. There was a committee that was put together to look at districts because a lot of people in the community have brought it up. Is it something that the entire county wants? I'm not sure. My preference would be that the voters decide whether they want districts or not. I love serving at large. I love being in all parts of the county, but I understand if certain areas feel like they are not represented. It is the job of every board member to represent every part of the county and not make decisions just on the area that they are the liaison. And I think that the current board does a good job of that. If we did do districts, it certainly would take a lot of community involvement. And I don't think, like we've said before, just around a high school, as the county grows, that may not work. But we need to make sure that it's evened out wherever it is so that there's representation, the same representation all over the county.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. And finally, Mr. Johnston.
And my perception on this, and I hope those that are listening at home pay real close attention. You have a community need for representation in your specific area. Now, what has happened is there's a group of people who want control, and they see that need as an opportunity to come in there and draw the districts the way they want to draw the districts to get the people they want on the board to gain that control. So I need people to understand that premise to start with. I question the motivations of doing something fast. It went way too quick. And I'm assigned to the Smithfield-Selma area schools. I have a great working relationship with all my principals, talk to them on a regular basis, even visit my schools on a regular basis. Was out there this week checking the sanitation stations, and I live in Clayton. I think that if you are assigned to a set of schools, then you should represent those schools passionately. But if you look at districts, I want to be an at-large candidate. What I would like is a blended model that has districts and at-large candidates, much like many of your town councils, because I think that keeps people honest, because what we don't want is what Wake County has, where people are fighting and bickering for things over their district and nothing can get done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
All right, Mr. Tippett, you will have the opportunity to respond first to this question. And the question is, what do you think is the greatest challenge in Johnston County Public Schools regarding special education? And how do you plan to address this challenge?
Well, obviously, as I said earlier, I think we do an exceptional job with our special ed students. That's why we have lots of people that move into the county. The biggest challenge is I just was at Corinth Wilderness High School. We didn't, quite frankly, we didn't have enough staff to do it. You want to meet the needs of the students. You've got to meet the needs of your clientele. And right now, with the way we're doing things in our school system, we're not meeting the needs of our special education students. Now, when we come back to school, there's certainly things we can do. We got to make sure our staff positions are filled, make sure we have adequate staff, make sure we have adequate programs for them. We got to be able to offer more trade, more vocational opportunities. I've been pushing that since December. I've put programs out there to work with, use the AGP model if needed, and focus on those trade vocational opportunities for not only for special ed kids, but for any kid who's not going to college. We're leaving those kids behind, and a lot of those kids are special ed kids. And those are the kids that are falling behind now, falling behind more, and we got to focus on it. We got to be ready to do it.
Thank you. Dr. Williams?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier how COVID had uncovered this digital divide. And I think COVID is also teaching us a lot about the needs and concerns of our special ed community. They have been some of the most vocal voices in wanting to get their kids back to school, understandably, because they just cannot replace the classroom with remote learning. So again, I go back to continuing to develop a cogent, safe plan to get these kids back. And I actually endorse what the board has decided in trying to move these kids first. I think that makes a lot of sense. Terry just touched on adequate staffing. That's a problem. We need adequate staffing. We need good ratios, and we got to have quality staffing. This is a difficult population to work with, and the variety of needs is significant. This is not a one-size-fits-all issue. This can vary from school by school, and obviously from student to student. And finally, just letting the parents know that we care, we're available, we support them. This is an important population, and we have to let them know that we're making them a priority.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Ms. Andrews. I'm sorry, Mr. Wooten, I almost skipped you. My apologies.
I think EC is a challenge mainly because of funding. The funding we get from the state. Our EC population is about 16%. We get funded about 12%. As far as our expenses over funding is about $10 million over, which comes out of our local funding. Hopefully we got a finance director that's going to trim those expenses. But even when you trim expenses, the staff has to have support in the schools. And I think that is key. I worry about the special education of COVID. Dr. Williams hit on this, COVID. I'm worried about the social-emotional health of our students that aren't getting served at our home that we don't know about. That's a major concern and another reason why students need to be in school. Thank you.
Now, Ms. Andrews.
Yes, when you talk about special education, you're talking about a broad spectrum of students. You're talking about students with mild disabilities. You're talking all the way through students who have severe cognitive delays, and each of those have to be met. First, let me say this, special education was never meant to stand alone. It was meant to be a supplemental service to regular education. Although we have students who do not attend regular education for a maximum part of their day, but special ed was never meant to be alone. It was to be in conjunction. We do have to look at strategic instruction for our exceptional children. I agree with all the situations that are going on with COVID, but let's get back to face-to-face when that happens. We've got to be strategic in our instruction for reading and math. If I don't learn to read, little else matters. And many of these students, they can learn, they just learn at a different rate than the rest. Also, we need to be sure, as Mr. Tippett said, we need to be looking at career opportunities as they move out through our schools. Again, I just think that's huge. We do have vocational programs that they have access to, but how well are they performing in them? How well are they being prepared for postgraduate? But again, funding is an issue for exceptional children, and that continues to be an issue, but it wasn't meant to stand alone.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. And Mr. Carroll. Mr. Carroll, you're still on mute.
Excuse me, I had a little technical glitch there. I apologize. The Exceptional Children's Program, is a challenge. It has been a challenge for many, many years. And, again, I will go back at the state of North Carolina based on the funding that we see. We have dramatically cut at the state level what we are doing for public education in the state. We're way behind states around us in our region. So we need to have a concerted effort to relook at those things. For years, the percentage that the state funds has been well below most of the systems, especially some of the poor systems in our state. So, the state, I think, has an obligation to relook at how they fund those things. I agree that programming has to be looked at. It is a challenge for a county like us to provide the education for these students. Mr. Tippett was exactly right. We have had, even when I was on the board some years ago, we had people moving into Johnston County simply because we had such a good exceptional children's program doing such a good job with them. But I do believe, reading, writing, reading especially is critical.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. That's your time. Ms. Grant?
Hi. As I said before, we've expanded our pre-K, and we need to do more of that because getting those students started early is a big help. The earlier they start, the better. Staffing is an issue, and not just our teachers, but we need more nurses. We need more social workers, psychologists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, all those people that serve our students' needs. And for them to be able to serve the needs, we have to get them back in the classroom. I've been an advocate for bringing our exceptional children in pre-K back into the classroom from the beginning of us having talks to get them back in. We need funding. Working with our legislators to remove that cap would be a great thing, because generally we're underfunded 10 million for our EC students. Partnering with organizations like JCI for vocational opportunities for our graduating students would be great as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. And Mr. Johnson?
And I think it's already been said, but I'll go a little bit further. Funding is always going to be your major challenge when addressing EC and special needs, because absolutely 16% is where Johnston County is. And we have 37,000 students. So we have 5,920 students who are identified with some type of IEP, but we're only funded at 12.75%, which is 4,718, which leaves us 1,202 people we are not receiving funding for. Now, whenever you look at the funding, it is not 100%. We get roughly $4,400 or $4,500 per IEP. Now, some do not meet that $4,500 threshold, but some way exceed the $4,500 threshold. So if you're talking about a state formula, you're going to be chasing that forever. So funding is going to be an ongoing issue, and there does need to be some type of reform, but you can get past the financial stuff and talk about other things. We need to be teaching these young men and young women framework to enjoy themselves, be on school and learn and have socialization and meaningful lives to include work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And Mr. Mercer, you have the final response.
Yeah, certainly funding's an issue. We know that that was one of the main drivers in the shortfall that the school system experienced last year. I believe the other night when they did the financial overview at the meeting, they discussed how salaries for EC teachers were rising exponentially, and the new finance director, Mr. Britt, I think suggested moving using some of our state position allotments to maybe fund some of the EC teaching and instructor and counselor positions. So looking for ways strategically to use those state position allotments better is important for EC and all across the board, really. We need to look at facilities. I think in many of our schools, Clayton Highs, I had a tour of Clayton High recently, and the facilities for some of their students or the EC students were really not acceptable. And so we need to address needs like that as well. But we need to focus. I heard us talk about focusing on grade level reading. We need to focus on that. There are many more 4-year-olds who are eligible for pre-K but are not enrolling in Johnston County. I think we need to make a concerted effort working with stakeholders in the community partnership for children and others to address that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer.
Okay, the next question will go to Dr. Williams first. Presently, 900,000 school children in North Carolina are dependent upon school for breakfast and lunch. After COVID-19, 30% of children are considered food insecure at this point. If elected, what ideas or programs will you implement within the Johnston County school system to combat food insecurity for our students?
First step is figuring out the scope of the problem. We've already talked about this a couple times tonight, and food insecurity is another area that the pandemic has made us critically aware of. I want to commend the schools for our effort. I sense such a great spirit of concern and cooperation at the beginning of the pandemic. One of the first things we made sure of was that food programs could continue. My kids and my wife were riding around Clayton during that time and said, well, look, there's the bus with one of our teachers passing out meals. I mean, just amazed to see that type of on the ground concern. So first of all, and most simply, we have to channel that energy into recognizing this is a problem that doesn't end. These children still need access to meals. These children will still face these same insecurities over breaks into the summer. And we're going to need to look at the logistics of doing so on a concurrent, ongoing basis, but also make sure that we're not missing students that have not already been captured that are in the program. There's my time, sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Next is Mr. Wheaton.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to commend all the cafeteria workers and bus drivers that are assisting in curbside pickup, delivery of pre-cooked lunches for students that wouldn't have anything otherwise. We do, from the CARES Act, have funding available to carry this program through December. But the most important program, I think, across Johnston County is the backpack program and the partnerships we have with churches and families that are putting together backpacks to make sure students have food, not only during the week, but also during the weekend. I urge more partnerships, not only as mentors, but as more organizations to supply backpack buddy programs to support our community schools. That's one of the biggest programs we have across the county and probably the most effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheaton. Up next is Mrs. Andrews.
I'm so glad you asked this. This is near and dear to me. I've been involved in helping deliver some lunches through local churches this summer, and this fall, I've seen the desperate need of our families. One of the issues we're running into is, we have I'm not exactly sure, maybe 45% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. And so that's a lot of kids that are hungry right now for breakfast and lunch. We have programs in place, obviously, for during the school year, but I agree with some of the others. We've got to continue to tap into communities, churches that are willing to help with this. Money is available now. One of the biggest issues right now for parents as they move back into school is parents can't get online to apply for free and reduced lunch. That's one reason we were glad that this whole thing was extended, because if they held them to being qualified right now, we got a lot of kids that wouldn't be getting food because they have yet to go online and qualify for the program. So we've got to work with that. But yes, this is a continuous need. It's not going away. And so we have to continue to look at how we're going to work with other areas in order to meet the needs of these kids. They're hungry. Children are hungry.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Next is Mr. Carroll.
I think one thing we've learned in this COVID issue is the fact that if we work together and pull together, we can solve problems, because we've been feeding children. And I would say kudos and just a great big hand out to the cafeteria workers in this county and the way this school system came together to make sure that the students, families got a breakfast and a lunch, and no questions asked. If you wanted 10 meals, you got 10 meals. And I think that is the attitude we need to have as we go forward. So one of the things we do, we have a network across this county of food pantries, churches, backpack programs across the county. One thing that I would like to see us do is when the COVID first hit, we had some conversation with emergency management at the county level, and they have all kinds of programs that they can tap into. And I think if we would organize this and make it a central thing so we're all working together, we can continue to provide food even during the summer for these children. So let's just get it organized.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Next up is Ms. Grant.
Well, besides the COVID time of distributing food, we do have a summer feeding program. But parents or students have to come to the school to pick up those meals. If we could get relief from the legislator to be able to use our buses like we can do during this COVID time, we can take those foods to distribution areas, places closer to the students so that they can get their food. That would be a great thing to do during the summer, not just this COVID time. A parent reached out to me about a USDA program, I think my second year on the board, and I offered that up. It was a grant, and the school system applied for that. So some of our schools do receive free lunches for all students. Another teacher reached out about food that's thrown in the trash, and I asked 3 times, could we give that food to students to take home? On the 3rd time, we finally said yes. We figured out a way, so we started shared tables. So there's a lot of ways. There's so much community involvement right now, and hopefully it will continue as we try to feed these children going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Mr. Johnston.
I'm certainly glad this hadn't been said yet, but during our last board meeting, I was advocating with the support of my 2 colleagues on the forum that we start feeding kids on the weekend and we continue this summer feeding program indefinite, because the worst thing that can happen is for a child to go hungry. There's no one that will disagree with that. There's no taxpayer not willing to pay a little extra so a child eats. That's not debatable. What could happen is you could have a lack of communication and resources. That is the biggest detriment to public safety in any organization, when you don't have the communication about your resource chain. There are great places willing to partner with the school system. If you go to the Sarah Yard Center in Smithfield, they were feeding kids all summer, and I mean, they do amazing things in our community, and they're teachers. And as soon as I talked about having meals delivered and offering comp time and overtime pay to these employees, my phone lit up with text messages from bus drivers. I'll deliver those meals. I would love to do that. We've got the people. We just need to coordinate the resources and keep the program going. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Mercer.
Yeah, I think I really applaud the school board. I don't applaud them a lot these days, but I do applaud that idea of using the school buses to take food to where people are. I think that's a really innovative idea, and it's good creative thinking. I applaud that. But you can't learn when you're hungry. We know that, and we also know that addressing hunger is a community effort. And in Garner, where we are, we have a strong Backpack Buddies program. It involves churches, it involves civic groups. I think we need to raise up the churches and faith groups that are working and offering wraparound services and after school programs and food pantries, and the town governments and probably the county. Certainly the town governments, I think, need to partner with some of the stakeholders in the community to provide resources. We do that in the town of Garner. We partner with the Community of Hope, which has a food pantry, after school programs, other wraparound services, and they're connected to First Baptist of Garner. We can do that type of thing here too.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer. And finally, Mr. Tippett.
I just echo what a lot of folks have already said. Certainly, I think Ron was correct in suggesting we do it on weekends as well. And as Teresa said, deliver the meals. And Rick just chimed in and said, hungry kids are not going to be able to learn. That's one of the things we got to do. It seems like we have a lot of community support. I think our communities will support it. I think the biggest issue is delivering it. And that's where we got to work and get sometimes you got to go through so many hoops to do things. And we should be able to use our buses to deliver these meals. This is just one of many things that affect learning. We talk about increasing achievement scores. You increase achievement scores by taking care of some of the symptoms that lead to it. The hunger at home, the problems at home, the lack of medical attention at home. That's why back in December, I suggested that we increase nurses, psychologists, along with our resource officers, because you got to focus on the symptoms before we can fix the big problem like this.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
we're now, sorry, Sierra, we are now at the final part of our forum tonight, and this is where you will have the opportunity to make your closing statement. As a reminder, you will have 2 minutes to make your closing statement to the audience. And Mr. Wooten, we will start with you finally.
Thank you. It's been an honor to serve Johnston County Board of Education for the last 12 years, and I'd like the opportunity to serve another. I'm a product of Johnston County Schools. My dad moved our family to Johnston County in 1969 when Triple S was built, and him and Charles Tucker opened that school. And he was a teacher, coach, and dad to many students that came through that high school, Lynn Andrews being one of them. I'm a product of the school system. I'm still vested in the school system. My wife is a 34-year teacher and still teaching and coaching at Princeton. I have a daughter that's a senior at Princeton High School. I have a son that graduated from Johnston County Public Schools, and I enjoy serving a system that prepared me 39 years ago. I would never be where I am today without the school system investing in me. I appreciate your vote of confidence in November. I'll be focused on students. I'm an approachable person. I have great relationships with the commissioners and our legislatures in General Assembly in Raleigh, and we'll continue to nurture those relationships for funding for the school system in the future. Thank you for your vote in November. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Wooten. Ms. Andrews, you have the floor for your final remarks.
Well, who would have ever thought when we left the polls on March the 3rd that 6 months and 12 days later, we would be where we are right now. And I know we're in uncharted waters. People are frustrated, students, parents, grandparents, teachers, staff. We wish things were different, but they're not. And I think we all agree that the model we're using for instruction right now is not ideal. Do students need to be back in school? Yes. I think we all feel that way, but this is where we are and we have to work through this time. No one person has all the answers, but together we can make it better. I love Johnston County, and I know all of you do too. And I have a sincere desire to serve this school system as a member of your Board of Education. I desire to be a servant leader, someone who will work hard so that others can experience life's greatest purpose. And I feel strongly that my experience and knowledge in education would enhance my ability to ask relevant questions, and I'm sure make informed decisions. Because of my career, I can see the big picture. In my work, I have experience with budget. I've worked with every facet of the school system. I'm trained in the legal issues of public education. I understand the support teachers need. My work has always been and will continue to be defined by my commitment to serve our entire school system. We will move forward, and we're going to be better on the other side of the situation that we're in right now. We don't ever need to think otherwise, but it's going to take hard work, committed members of the board with a common vision and a purpose. It wasn't too many years ago that our school district was getting phone calls from around the state and the nation saying, what are you doing in Johnston County? Because whatever you're doing is working. In recent years, the phone stopped ringing, except for the reporters who wanted to write something negative about our school district. My hope and prayer and my commitment is that the phone is going to ring again, but it's going to be ringing because people are calling and saying, what are you doing in Johnston County? Because it's working, because you're having a positive effect on your students. There's 4 seats available in November. I just want one of them. And if you want someone who's open-minded, a hard worker, someone you can trust, someone with a voice of reason, someone who is going to take what I know and learn a great deal more to serve this district, I would appreciate your vote for Lynn Andrews. Thank you.
Have y'all called on me yet?
Not yet, Mr. Carroll, but it is your turn.
Okay. I would just like to say that board, that system that Ms. Andrews just told you all about, I was serving on the Board of Education during that period of time, and I actually served as chairman a couple of times. So I do have experience, a lot of experience in dealing with the budget, dealing with bond issues, dealing with improving academics. Now, I'm not saying that I was solely responsible for that, because I'm not. I served on a board that had a bunch of good board members. We had good staff. We had good teachers, superintendents, principals. So, and we still have a lot of that in place, and we just need to get ourselves organized again. We got to get our curriculum right. We have to come back and we have to have that unity of vision. You need to establish the vision and involve all the folks in it, the teaching staff, the parents, the students, your board, and in what you want to accomplish. And you need to use your data to get there, and you got to look at it, reuse it, look at it, and then you have to set your sights again, make corrections, revisions, but a continuous cycle of analyzing data, setting goals, and then moving ahead, all of one accord. Now, you can have certain disagreements about how to get there, but everybody needs to be on board that academic achievement is our number one goal. Financial integrity is another goal that we have to have. And we have to support the teachers in the classroom, get out of their way and let them teach, because I can tell you, they're doing a marvelous job under very difficult circumstances right now. I've been a teacher, and I tell you what, we're not paying them enough. We need to give them patience. We need to hug their necks and tell them, thank you very much for what they do for our children. You do have options. You get 4 votes come November. I just asked for one of your 4 votes. Just put me with any other 3 you'd like, and I would appreciate it. I'll work hard as I can for this school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Next is Ms. Grant.
Thank you. Well, first I want to say it's been an honor to serve on the Board of Education. It's one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. Because of the great staff that we have, our future is bright in Johnston County Public Schools, and I'd appreciate the opportunity to serve one more term. I've already listed the things we need to do. Student achievement. I mean, there's everything revolves around that, but we do have a lot of good news to share. We've used renovation monies for every feeder pattern, bond monies for every feeder pattern in the county for renovations. We've reduced central office staff and put some of those staff in schools so they could have effects on our students, direct student success. We hired a superintendent that has a great track record for student achievement, so we're expecting good things from him. We've produced a more transparent, informative budgetary process to include a wellness audit. We hired a great finance officer, and he also has a proven track record. We can't wait to see all the things that he's going to do. We're starting out with a $10 million surplus in fund balance. We've purchased that reading curriculum. Now we're evaluating math. We still need science and social studies. We continually add to our internships and job shadowing and mentoring and pre-apprenticeship programs. We have full AVID and IB feeder patterns. The JOCO Teach program, I love that, growing our own teachers. As I said, we implemented the share tables. We're partnering with mental health providers to provide on-site services for students. We increased the number of SROs and safety and security in our schools. And we ensured that when we did budget cuts, that no teacher salaries were touched, because that would have a huge impact on student success. You can't replace a good teacher. We need to keep all that we can and do more to have more of those teachers in our classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Mr. Johnston, your closing statement.
You know, for the past 4 years, my first election, the midterm, and this one, I've heard a lot of lackluster speeches from a lot of wannabe politicians, and people want to do things for various reasons. And, you know, it all seems to come out of a can. And when we talk about the things that have happened over my term, you know, we talk about all the things that the public may want to forget. I haven't been wrong yet. And I'll have worked with my colleagues. And when those doors close and we go into closed session, they know who has the ideas. They know who is an innovative thinker. And no matter what I do, from when I wake up in the morning, I go to my job at the police department, I go teach at the community college, I'm a driving instructor. My goal is to help people. And if you look at those news stories, any decision I made look at the public and tell them I was wrong. Those central office raises, I think they would say I was right. Mascot change, I think they would say I was right. And when a creepy, decrepit old man couldn't keep his hands to himself, I think they would say I was right. So you might not like how I do things, but my heart is in the right place and I want to do the right thing. And I love teaching. I love being a police officer. I love helping people. I love being on the Board of Education because when you call me, I try to fix your problem. When something is wrong, I do my best to make it right. I do that because when I was hungry, when I was a kid, when I had nowhere to go, nothing productive to do, those teachers were there for me. The teachers at Selma Middle School, I would stay in their room to 6:30 at night waiting for my mom who worked second shift. When I would go to the cafeteria and not have any lunch money, Kathy Myers, a lot of folks would help me. And when I heard the call to run for the Board of Education, because things weren't quite right, people have pointed out things weren't right, and they called me. And you look at the past 4 years, who made the stand? And Grant, thanks for having my back. Later.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Next is Mr. Mercer.
Yes, Laura and I came here to Clayton more than 13 years ago, and we were thrilled by the community and by the opportunities that the schools offered. At that time, Clayton was being touted nationwide for having some of the best schools and most affordable housing. These days, you don't get those kind of accolades coming out of Clayton, unfortunately, or elsewhere in the county. We've seen financial chaos. We've seen declining achievement. We have 14 low performing schools in our school district now, over 30%. That's unacceptable. We need representation from someone who brings an outsider's perspective, fresh skill set, fresh experiences, but who has sound government experience at the same time. I can be that person. In this race, I feel like I'm the true outsider candidate and could complement any board that voters might select in November. The other important thing is Laura and I are more heavily invested in this school system than I think anyone else here in this call. We have 2 daughters in the school system. We'll have at least 1 daughter in the school system for the next 9 years. So this is a long-term investment for us. This is not a vanity project. This is something personal to us, and we will fight for everybody. And that brings me to my next point, which is I'm really proud of the broad-based and inclusive coalition we're trying to build in our campaign. I think this would enable me to be more representative of all the people of the county. And I look forward to being held accountable by all of our people in this county. Our children don't deserve another 4 years of declining achievement, of overcrowded schools where you put dozens of kids into a trailer for trying to learn a foreign language. They don't deserve a crumbling building with rodent problems. They don't deserve increasing segregation along racial and socioeconomic lines. If elected, I'll work with commissioners to build a better future for our kids. But I won't be afraid to tell them that we need to put the interests of children and families ahead of the interests of developers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Next up is Mr. Tippett.
Thanks. Just to touch base real quick on some of the things that I've been pushing. We've touched on some of those tonight. We touched on, obviously, since December, I've been pushing increased trade vocational opportunities. I pushed for increase in nurses, psychologists, resource officers. I've also questioned the budget over and over again. And I want to say publicly, thank you, Mr. Britt. He's answered a lot of questions that I had. He's not answered the questions yet, but he's put a process in place to answer those questions. I'm not sure why in the heck it took this long to get it done, but thank you, Mr. Britt, for taking the initiative to do that. Now, the other thing, we look at the curriculum and what we can do with curriculum, how we can help there. And of course, we've got lots of stuff to work on. I hope you're looking at my videos on Facebook, which we'll touch on that subject later on this week or the first of next week. The other thing, we talked about district elections. Well, it's kind of like when I was an athletic director, every team was my team. That's the same approach I would take on the school board. Every single school will be my school. Can you see me?
We cannot see you, but we can still hear you.
I'm sorry. Every single school would be my school, and that's the approach I would take. We need to recognize our people in our school. I mean, everybody is important, and we better start taking care of our substitute teachers because we're going to need a whole lot of them, and they need to feel like they're part of the school system as well. I've heard from a lot of those that don't feel like they're part of the school system. My main objective is to get more money into the classrooms. Let's see what we can do without on Highway 70 for a change. Let's see if we can get some more money in the classroom. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can better serve our kids. And nobody's mentioned the competency-based learning grading. I'm totally opposed to that for a lot of reasons. I'll discuss that later on in some videos as well. I hope you're looking at the Facebook page. I hope you decide to vote for me. There's lots of people that are going to vote for me that won't vote for me for different reasons. I got a wrong zip code. I'm a conservative Republican. I'm a conservative Christian. I'm a deacon in my church. There's all kinds of reasons you can find for not voting for me. But if you don't want to vote for me, I hope it's because of my positions and not personal bias. Have a good night and God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Tippett. And finally, we will have Dr. Williams.
Well, I'd like to thank the Junior League for doing this. It's a tough time to do campaigning. We just appreciate the opportunity to be online, ability to share with you all. As a parent, physician, teacher, a business owner, a school volunteer, and a community leader, I'm uniquely qualified amongst all the 8 candidates you've heard from tonight to represent you on your Board of Education. In the interest of time, I'll just highlight 3 of my qualifications. First, there has never been a more important time for the system to have a physician voice on the board as we continue to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic. Not only do we have to make decisions this fall about how we return students and staff to school safely, but we will also have to address the fallout from COVID and all the educational and social losses that will result from the students' time away from the classroom for months and years to come. COVID isn't going anywhere, and we will have to be making policy decisions about this well into 2021. Secondly, it's critical to have parents with children currently in the school system on our board. Parents with children in the schools have a unique perspective on day-to-day operations, the morale of the schools, the concerns of the principals and the teachers. The parents are out there every day. We're helping with homework. We're walking the halls. We're attending school events. We're interacting with teachers. We see firsthand how our schools are performing, and we have the most vested interest of any stakeholder in making sure our schools are performing with excellence. Having had 3 boys go through the schools from elementary to high school and still 2 in school, I have a unique perspective on how we're doing. Thirdly, I'm a business owner. I'm new to the board. I don't have any connection to the school system. No family members work for the school system. I've never served on the board before. I don't have any personal or political alliances that would influence my service as a member. I can work with everyone, and I'll be a voice of reason, common sense, and unity. The board needs more members with new ideas, business sense, and fresh energy. I'm the candidate that can deliver that. My 3 boys have had a wonderful experience in Johnston County Public Schools. I sincerely want every family in the county to have the same feelings about their kids' education experience that I have. I'm ready to contribute my time, skills, and leadership to ensure all students in the county have a fair shot at an excellent education.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And thank you to all of our candidates for joining us tonight. We appreciate you taking the time for us and for putting yourselves out there to serve the citizens of Johnston County and especially our children. Thank you so much to my co-moderator, Ms. Tamara Pierce from Delta Sigma Theta, the Johnston County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and for all of your assistance in planning the forum as well as other folks on the committee. Thank you to the viewers for joining us tonight. We hope that this forum has helped in your efforts to make an informed decision when you vote on November 3rd or before November 3rd. This recording, as well as the recording from our Board of Commissioners virtual forum, will be available through the November 3rd general election at www.jwlsmithfield.com. On behalf of the Junior Women's League of Smithfield, thank you to the Johnston County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for your assistance in hosting this forum. And check back in just a little while for contact information for all of the candidates that will be posted to our Facebook page, as well as our website, jwlsmithfield.com, so that you can get in touch with them if you have additional questions. Thank you all very much and have a good night.
Thank you.
Right.